What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Evan Abrams, and I'm joined, as always, with these episodes. We did it through the draft. We did it through the offseason. NFL expert, Chris Raybon. Chris, what's going on, man? How are you? Happy June.
Happy June, Evan. I will say I'm a little exhausted here. We did I think back-to-back 4-hour pod record marathons. First we did Stuckey and I did 4 hours of win totals, which we're about to talk about, and then me, Carter, and Chris Jamino did like another three hours on going rounds 1 through 18 in drafts, in fantasy drafts. So I'm in peak September form. Let's get to it.
Yeah, not just that. You've been doing NBA Finals stuff here, bouncing all over the place. We got U.S. Open this week. Very busy time for June in sports. But yes, today we are going to talk about NFL win totals. And again, you need to check out his best bets and everything they did, Stuckey and Raybon. Pod that was released in 4 parts last week, NFC and AFC. They go over every team. It's really as much as you can handle across every team, and lots of different bets there. So please go check that out. But today, me and Raybon, we're going to talk about just the top of the class. The highest win totals in the NFL, double-digit win totals specifically. And before I toss it to you with just more of a question on like philosophy here a little bit, I just want to say kind of why we're doing this pod. So I put out an article on Action on double-digit win totals. I've been doing this the last few years. I became more interested in just this kind of blind blanket method of how to bet, win totals of higher, lower. When the 17-game schedule got released in 2021, I felt like the change of the extra game kind of, created an opportunity potentially. And the data is interesting, so we will go over a bunch of that stuff. But that is kind of the why we're doing this. And again, the win totals to be consistent year to year. I use them from Westgate, so Westgate Superbook, and basically, obviously, there's juice on different sides, but whatever win total they have posted is the win total that I've used for this and before and continue this year. So I guess my question, Raybon, just off the bat, before we kind of dive into a few sections, and then at the end, we're going to go over all 8 teams that fall into this and kind of get Chris's thoughts and a few quirks itself. But Raybon, in terms of the 17th game, like in 2021, adding that, like, what is that thought process like for you? Like, what went into that? Talk about that as just a handicap in general.
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I just wanted to see, win percentage wise, what would change. And it turns out nothing too much changes. I've actually found that just looking at the data. So if you go back, I like to go back to 2002, just kind of when I'm working with my bigger data sets, just because that's when the NFL went to 32 teams. So there is some, like, across a lot of different futures, there's some comparison there. And I found that over the long-term data, the sweet spot for betting overs is usually on the low side. Like, it's in the 5 to 6.5 win total range. And double-digit win totals, and generally just everything above that is tends to be it's under or nothing in terms of if you're just looking for a blanket like plus EV. So the 17-game schedule didn't change too much for me handicapping it. I think it's just now these 500 teams. There's always going to be an 8.5, and I think it's back in the day, I think you got more like flat 8s and things like that. Whereas now, I think it just kind of magnifies that sweet spot is going to be if you're looking to bet overs, like in the lower range, because those are the teams kind of slept on, and I think it just kind of makes some of these other teams, like 9.5s and up, like you got to win 10 games. I just think it makes it a little harder, honestly. And if you look, even like before they switched to the 17 games, like it's just if you look at double-digit win totals with non-Tom Brady and like Peyton Manning teams, they're pretty bad, and they stay pretty bad. But I don't know. What about you? Any thoughts on how that kind of affected your handicap?
I mean, in general, like you said, it's one of a much bigger sample size. I think it probably affected futures a little bit, just extending the season. I think end of year buys, like I think bye week ends up impacting it a little bit if it's, if you have an early buy and you have to go an extra week. Now, again, the last week of the regular season doesn't really mean a ton to every team. As a lot of teams are eliminated already. So I think it kind of just extends the schedule a little bit. But let me just, you had something?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think in general, so there's a couple things to note. Just in general with futures, you had the COVID year, you went to 7 teams in the playoffs, so that that happened. I think the year before we switched to the 17
I think you're right.
game schedule, so that's one kind of breaking point, and I do think that overall, just as we get a larger data set, maybe more trends will emerge. But one thing I've kind of noticed, it doesn't directly relate maybe to like how you bet these win totals, but just something I did notice to kind of pay attention to is teams, I think, are more than ever are drafting in early rounds. Like they're playing their guys with this longer season. You can't really afford to draft a guy. Like remember tight ends, it used to be they take a couple years to develop, even if they're really talented guys. Now it's like, no, you're getting like 1,000-yard seasons out of Brock Bowers, even Kyle Pitts, because you can't afford that rookie contract for a quarterback. With the longer schedule, like I think it changed more in terms of how teams operate with the cap and just how teams play guys early. So maybe you see teams that draft well or some like trends kind of emerging as we get a larger data set. But that's more the kind of overall change, I think, league wide that you do notice along with that kind of coincides a little bit with that 17 game schedule.
Playing time is interesting from a just like get on the field early point of view. I hadn't really thought about that. But
you see receivers too, like receivers in general, just play right away. There's not as many like second, third year breakouts. It's just these guys are getting more reps in school, more spread offense, and then they come to the league. You're getting you just can't really afford to kind of sit on your hands anymore with these guys.
I think it's also, we've also turned into a what have you done for me lately culture. And I think, seriously, you draft somebody and, you want them to produce right away. Because I think it's not only about the player, but it's about the person who picked the player or stood up in the room and said, this was my guy. You don't necessarily love him sitting for a year or, having not as many snaps and reps to kind of show what he's done. But let's just talk about this simply from a top level data point of view, and we can kind of go from there. But double-digit win totals have mostly evened out after about 8 years of an outlier leading up to legalization, and then 3 years later, the 17-game schedule. So just some plain data here. So since the 17-game schedule in 2021, they are just 18 and 19 to the over. But the most important, that is double-digit win totals. But the more important thing is they're only going under their win total on average by about 0.14. So a very, very small margin. The thing that's interesting is if you go back 2017 to 20 and 2013 to 16, taking the same sample sizes, basically the win total had gone under by 0.76 and 0.82, which is a large difference between the 0.14. So I know we're doing mostly audio here, so I'm trying to be very specific with some of these numbers. But basically, these double-digit win totals, because, again, we're adding a game to the schedule, there's more double-digit win totals per season by team, just because we're expected by more wins because there's an extra week. So I think it's natural to say that the 10 and a half range is becoming more populated. And like you said earlier, like some of these teams at some books might be 9.5, but either way, I think, everybody's wins bumping up one kind of created more double-digit win totals. So overall, and then I'll toss it to you, since 2021, we've had 12 win totals of 11 wins or more. Okay, and they are just 4 and 8 to the over, and only one team for each of the 4 overs, which I think is actually probably the most interesting stat there, which is no team has had a win total that high and done it twice. So 24 Chiefs, 23 San Francisco, 22 Buffalo, and 21 Tampa Bay are the 4 teams to go over with that high of a win total. So I think, again, where at least recently you're seeing a sweet spot is kind of what you mentioned in that 10 and a half range. While just like you and Kerner and everybody here tends to look at unders, like a lot needs to go right for you to hit a double-digit win total, especially in the 11 and a half range. So, I'll toss it back to you. I put out a lot there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the longer season does create more variance, as you mentioned, and I mean, in a way, because it's like you're increasing the sample size, but there is more parity, and I think within the season, you also have to remember that, and that's why I tried to talk about some of the other changes league wide. Like there's been changes in the recent past that kind of coincide with this to the injury reserve rules. For example, like remember before it was like you go on injury reserve and you're done for the year, and then it became you go on injury reserve and you're done, except one guy could come off, and then it was now it's like what 4 games and it's like you could get a bunch of guys on and off, and so there a lot changed roster wise and around that COVID time too. So I teams have to kind of manage it more. I think teams do value getting up there and, like I think tanking actually, is like more viable a little bit now because, and it's just stretched out a little more. So you're seeing like there could be a couple bad teams, but I think when it comes to the top of the win totals, you're just trying to manage your season and you don't always see these dominant, 15-1 teams. But I just think that's more of a result of parity. I mean, in the AFC, it's not surprising that you don't really have a bunch of teams doing it multiple times because you have this kind of tier now, right? Of this big three of Mahomes and Allen and Lamar, and I guess you could put Burrow in there, but it's like you win one year, and then there's only one bye week now, like one top seed in the playoffs too. So that also kind of changes how teams are going about trying to get these wins, right? Because if you're at the top of the league, it used to be you had 2 bye weeks to aim for, like two first round buys. And now you only have 1. So like last year, like the Chiefs were kind of mid, right? But they just rattled off 15 wins. So it's like now if you're Buffalo, all right, we're playing Joe Milton in week 17, or what was it? You were playing Mitch Trubisky in week 18, and the Patriots, I don't even know what they were doing. They were out of it, and they were playing Joe Milton. So it's like you just have these kind of weird kind of quirks, which is why I do think it's, you kind of have to, like you're doing, breaking it up into, okay, let's look at 21 to 24. Let's look at further back and kind of compare it because so much has changed in the NFL and over these last couple of years since COVID. But I think that I do think the 1 playoff seed compared to 2 probably is having an effect. Obviously would need a larger sample to verify that, but my early lean is that is having some effect on why you're seeing on the high end, you're seeing it continue to be tough and maybe even tougher.
Yeah, more teams in contention, more teams staying with what they've got, more teams holding on, more teams playing later. Like it kind of makes sense to, I guess even out the competition in some sort and make those late season games for those really good teams a little bit harder than they had been. 2 things before we move on here that I think are just interesting, and I'll bring up more in a minute. Teams like the Lions, who win like 15 games, go over their win total by a bunch of games, and then what they do the next season, I think is interesting. And then I think the inverse, which is like, I believe this is right, but I believe Cincinnati and San Francisco are the 2 teams with higher win totals than their wins last season, or at least by a margin there. So I think kind of looking back and projecting what this year will be is kind of intriguing there. But Raybon, why don't you tell us a little bit about Underdog here?
Yeah, sure. So you can go yard all baseball season long with Underdog. Underdog's Pick'em game. Underdog, it's one of the leading sports apps. We all know that. You can play now in your state. Millions of fans are already doing it. They've won billions making picks on Underdog. Are you going to be next? Because to play, all you got to do, download the Underdog app, choose whether a player will go higher or lower than one of their stats. You can choose from things like home runs, strikeouts, total bases, all those stats, you know them. So once your picks feel good, you just lock it in as little as $1. And if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money, which is pretty cool. It's always fun to kind of hit on a home run. Home runs are one of the hardest things I think to predict, but so satisfying. And you get a nice little reward for doing that on Underdog. So make sure you download the Underdog app, sign up with promo code BBOC to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That bonus money when you make your first deposit. That's promo code BBOC. You must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and President and State where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
All right. Well, from baseball back to the gridiron, we can talk about something we just mentioned, which is kind of pedigree. So you had talked about Tom Brady and talked about Peyton Manning and basically filtering them out of some of this work and win total stuff. Because, again, some of the stuff they did there, I believe like 15-3-2 to the win total over in his career with Belichick or something stupid like that. So the one way I decided to look at this, and I'm curious your thought, is how many consecutive years did a team have a double-digit win total? And did that impact how they performed that year? Now, I actually found something a little interesting, which is teams who are in their first year with a double-digit win total. So, yeah, granted, it could have been 9 or 9.5 the year before. But either way, they've seen an increase or an expectation in the market. Okay, so since 1990, they are 38% to the over, 35, 57, and 4. 96 teams, and they're going under by about a win. It's 0.9 wins per team. So it's pretty much the most dramatic, the most outlier-ish of all the win total streaks you could have as a double-digit win total. So I found it kind of predictive in a way, in the sense that, when people think that this team is going to do something, they, not every time do that. And I think that's kind of what you get with a team in its first year. And if they get a double-digit win total the next year, that actually bumps up to 47%, which is like a 9-10% increase. So just kind of blanketed, which, there's obviously a ton of factors here. What's your thought on that exercise, I guess you would call it?
So I've noticed that too. And what I also do in my spreadsheet when I'm kind of looking at these is I also have their Pythagorean wins from the current year, the last year. And what you tend to find is teams that kind of overperform, then the Pythagorean win total is just, what your win total would have been implied by your point differential. So the higher the point differential, it correlates to a certain amount of wins. If you're exactly even, it's 500, you're about expected, 500 team, whatever. So what you tend to find is the best teams, the teams with pedigree, those teams do reliably overperform their Pythagorean win. So like the Bills, the Chiefs, they might, like last year, for example, the Chiefs, their Pythagorean win total was 10.2. They won 15 games. But Andy Reid's also 10-2 to the over. They do this. This is just what they do. And so the books are using, and as they should, when they're setting these win totals for the next year, that's one of the things they're using. Because, like, for example, this year, Minnesota, the Vikings win total, it isn't 14 or, whatever, how many games they won last year. It's 8.5. Yeah. And a large part of that is because they overperformed by nearly 3 wins with that 14-win season last year. And so, the teams that are going to kind of come back to earth, they do it pretty strongly. And the Vikings, maybe they end up establishing that pedigree under KOC, but right now, I wouldn't say they have it yet. And so, teams like that tend to come back. Whereas if you're seeing a team with consistent double-digit win totals, it usually means they do have that pedigree because, as I talked about with Stuckey, and I talked about in the Action app actually when I was kind of logging some futures, is if you go back 9 years, 18 Super Bowl spots, right? Okay, who made the Super Bowl in these 18 years? In these 18 spots, 9 years.
All the good quarterbacks.
Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, the Eagles organization, Shanahan offense, McVay offense, and Burrow. Just six different teams. or 6 different, like you could call it teams. You know, Shanahan, it was one with Atlanta and 2 with San Francisco. McVay had 2 different quarterbacks, but essentially there's organizations like the Eagles just tend to do really well. Obviously, Howie Roseman a big part of that. Coaches, and then so their pedigree kind of that's what you're really getting here, and so I think that kind of extends in a way to win totals, and now especially with with just one bye, it kind of just comes down to, it could come down to like schedule. It could come down to bye, like early bye. It's like whoever gets off to that early run, it's like, and you can run away with it sometimes, and no one else might. Like for example, the Rams last year, I believe, how many games did they actually win? Did they win 10?
I think so.
Yeah, but they could have won 11, but they punted the last week of the season, even though they didn't even care about the seeding, and like so you're seeing kind of more of that kind of stuff, right? Where people got to kind of be aware of that, and what each individual's team's philosophy is going to be, how that schedule sets up at the end. But in general, I think that with that, I think the one seed is creating some variance. But with the repeat stuff, I just think it's about the pedigree of these. There's a certain level of elite teams. You see them year after year, and you see it in the Super Bowl as well. And so it's kind of reflective in these win totals where you actually see a higher percentage going over if you're a repeat, because that just means you're solidified. Like you were able to, have a great season. And then so you get 10 wins and up, right? 11 wins and up. You're probably getting at least a second place schedule, if not a first place schedule. Because that's another thing. The harder your schedule, the more games you win, the harder your schedule the next year. So, and then you're able to do it again. It probably means you have a Mahomes or a Brady or like a McVay or whoever. So that I think that's kind of what, in my opinion, explains that.
I think the easiest from like a data point of view to explain it is, again, so that team in their first year, double-digit win total, going under by 0.9 wins per season. If you just look at 2 and 3, so second year and third year of a double-digit win total, it's basically a difference of a half a win, which is actually pretty significant in this sense. So completely agree there. I think we need to just now go over the teams. So our last step here is there's 8 teams. And again, we're using Westgate Superbook, which I've used for this for years now. They have 8 teams as a double-digit win total, and they've got 4 above that 10.5 mark, which we will start with. So basically, number 1 here is the champs with Philly. Philly is sitting at 11.5. 11.5. It's their 4th straight year as as a double-digit win total. They haven't done that since 2002 to 2005. So I guess we know what you think. If you've listened to Stuckey and Raybon's pods, you know how you feel about the Eagles. But tell people in a sentence or two your thoughts.
This is the NFC East. You don't win the NFC East 2 years.
Not back to back. Yeah, you can't do it.
You don't do it. It just doesn't happen. So and honestly, I think this could break the streak because Stuckey hates Cliff Kingsbury, and so I'm like, all right, if you're gonna fade the Eagles, you gotta back Washington, right? Like they're the most likely team. He's like, I'm fading them too. But I could, I mean, there is a good case. There's a fair case to fade Washington as well. I do think that what's going to end up happening, I could see the Eagles winning the NFC East, but with 10 games. Like I think it may only take 10 games.
Sure.
9. I do have a lot of respect for what they do roster wise, but they lost a lot of talent. So let me just say some names for the Eagles: Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Darius Slay, Oren Burks, Isaiah Rodgers, Bryce Huff. I mean, that's a lot of talent to lose. And these guys, if you just look at PFF, these guys are all ranked near the top of their positions. I mean, Sweat, 36 of 119. Williams, 13th of 118 interior linemen. Darius Slay, even in his 30s, number 23 cornerback out of over 100. Oren Burks, top 5 linebacker. Isaiah Rodgers, a top 25 corner last year. Bryce Huff, right in that sweat range, 38th. I mean, these guys, this is some serious talent. They also, again, they lose their offensive coordinator. And here's the, and this is what I was talking about, which is why you got to be good to be repeating, because the schedule gets harder. Kansas City, Buffalo, on the road for the Eagles, Tampa Bay, the Chargers, Green Bay, Minnesota. I'm not as high in Minnesota, but that's not an easy matchup. So just a ton of, and then you still got to host Detroit, you still got to host Rams, Denver, Chicago. I mean, there's almost no let up, especially if the Giants and Dallas are a little better, which I think they could be. So just a tough slate, a lot of talent lost. Super Bowl champs actually 13-9-1 since the NFL went to 32 games over. So it's been the Super Bowl loser that has like a much tends to suffer a little bit more in terms of that, and that could just be small sample variance. You're still talking about like one a year, so I'm not gonna put too much stock into it. Just kind of a trivia thing. But what are your thoughts on the Eagles? You think are you with us on the fade, or you think they do it again, because they still got a strong roster? To be fair,
I mean, the roster is strong, but it's different, right? You went over all the names, and that was kind of my point, which is their secondary is basically completely gone. They've revamped the entire thing, which I can understand. D-line, again, Sweat, Graham, Huff, all gone. So I think there's just more questions on the defense than there is the offense, which pretty much looks the same. Top 5 hardest schedules by win totals and a bunch of other metrics. The only thing is also the end of the year is tough. Again, you mentioned it. At Green Bay on Monday Night Football. Detroit Sunday Night Football, at Dallas, Chicago Black Friday, at the Chargers Monday Night Football, and that's right after the bye. So I think it's a bit of a difficult stretch. I'm with you on the under. Let's keep rolling here. So next would be Kansas City. So you had mentioned it before. Under Andy Reid, Chiefs 10-2 to their win total over. Andy Reid himself is 19-6-1 to their win total over with the Chiefs and Eagles. But last 4 years, they're just 2-2. So we've seen a little bit of up and a little bit of down. I mean, I'll toss it to you before I give, a few different facts and things like that. But Chiefs overall thought 11.5?
It would be under or nothing, but I'm not in the business of betting against Andy and Pat. I'm just not doing it. But I think the thing to watch with them is a couple of things. First 9 weeks, a little bit harder. So you could have some opportunity in season if you're trying to fade the Chiefs, or you want to back them, but you're just maybe on something like a Super Bowl. They host Philly, Baltimore, Detroit, Washington. They go to Buffalo. They play the Chargers in Brazil. Those are all in the first half of the season, and then the schedule lets up. So I want Super Bowl tickets on the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens in the AFC. And I play the Chiefs a little less because I'm kind of expecting to get a better price when they lose some games in season. But I mean, come on, this team had they were a 10-win team last year, and they still won 15 games. So hey, y'all got it, man. I like unders. I like being contrarian, but there's certain things I just don't do. Fading Pat and Andy is one of them. What about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I just can't do it. I can't click the button. I won't click the button. I just can't do it. I'm starting to like the Simmons Pickett line more as I look into it. So I do think, tune into the Bears. They get Rashee Rice back. I'm trying to look at the roster to see any difference. I think they still a huge question mark at running back. I know they're trying out Elijah Mitchell there, but we saw the Super Bowl.
Shard Smith.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy.
I mean, it reminds me of Pacheco, 7th round pick, 4th on the depth chart, but you can see a path, and he just gives them some juice. I mean, and these days it's these smaller guys that maybe aren't the greatest in pass protection. That's another thing I think with the way the cap has changed and the way that the schedule has changed and the IR rules have changed. I think speed is another thing that's getting on the field, and I think he does bring some of that. So. He's a guy I'm watching for, but I agree. I think you mentioned the running game, and I would say that extends to the line because it could still be bad. I mean, you're talking about you got to have Simmons win one of the jobs, and you'd ideally like Jalen Moore, who you also paid a ton of money, win the other job so that you could just get Juwan Taylor the heck out of here and his lining up as a slot receiver every damn possession, and then. but on top of that, like your bust of a draft pick, Kingsley Suamataia, he has to win the left guard job, and Andy Reid didn't. Like he's like, oh yeah, we like what he did, but really it's not a vote of confidence because he's like, yeah, he's competing with Caliendo. If you remember Caliendo, I mean, he might as well put Frank Caliendo at left guard for all that. Like he was terrible last year, so it could be bad for Kansas City, and the line is the thing that can slow them down. So that is kind of something to watch, and especially when you don't have a run game, it's going to be tough over a longer season. So they do end up punting a game here or there just because. So I would go under, but man, it's tough. But 11, I mean, they're at 11.5, or did you say, or 10.5?
I had 11.5.
Yeah, that's egregious.
Yeah, it's a little high. It's a little high for them. But again, 8 primetime games, which people have talked about as a record. The thing that looks at, you got to look at this more than anything is Andy Reid, 22-4 straight up in September since 2017-18. You look at the same numbers from Mahomes. So, I mean, that start of your schedule is absolutely brutal, but it's the Chiefs. So we'll kind of see what they do there. And then the stat, which you kind of mentioned before, but is definitely worth just repeating. Last 14 AFC Championship games, either Mahomes or Brady. The last one without either. So long ago, the Jets were in it. So basically,
was that Brian Schottenheimer? Brian Schottenheimer was in it too then.
10-11, yeah, Jets Steelers.
The Jets had a chance to win that game. I just couldn't. They couldn't break through at the goal line, if I remember correctly. I think they had a couple of
they had some cracks.
Sanchez just couldn't get them through. Yeah.
We could have had Sanchez in the Super Bowl, which would have changed all your stats. All right, let's go to Ravens.
Just add another L to some.
That's fair. Yeah. All right, Ravens at 11.5 as well. So this is actually the sixth straight year that the Ravens will have a double-digit win total. Crazy thing about the Ravens as well, I believe it's like 11 or 12, maybe even more straight years where they've been under 50-1, which I believe is the current active streak as well. So they've earned contention every single season, no matter what. In terms of the roster, to me, pretty much the same. I mean, they add Hopkins, they lose Tucker, but there isn't like too much turnover there. They're kind of running back what they had before. What's your thoughts on Baltimore?
There are some positives there, just like addition by subtraction. Like Marcus Williams played a ton of snaps. He was graded out as like the worst safety in the league. And then Brandon Stevens graded out as one of the worst corners in the league, and he played over 1,000 snaps. So the secondary could be better. I mean, they kind of got caught up, but it's Baltimore. We know by week 8, everyone's going to be hurt. And I think actually they could have some injury regression this year. So I would lean under. A team like this, I think you can approach it 2 ways. Like if you look to kind of bet overs and upside, and like I think with Baltimore, you just want the upside of like a Super Bowl ticket. More that, like if I'm bullish on Baltimore, which I am, but I don't want their win total over. I would still lean under. I just think you got 17 games from Lamar, a guy who runs around and could get hurt. You got 17 games from Derrick Henry, who's getting up there in age and an amazing season. You got 17 games from little ass Zay Flowers, who then immediately got hurt down the stretch. And then you got 17 games from Mark Andrews. And then 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen. 16 games from Likely. And Rosengarten was the guy that didn't play a full season. He still only missed 3 games. So it's like your entire offense got real lucky health-wise. And every year, if I remember correctly, it seems like Baltimore's banged up in some way. So the fact that they were able to stay healthy is just probably a little lucky. But, I mean, my God, Lamar Jackson might – like, he puts up another few more seasons like that. Like, he's got to be the best quarterback of all time, right? Like, I mean, it's through what? How many touchdowns with 4 interceptions? I mean, I just have never seen like something like it, especially when you're still running for damn near 1,000 yards. So anyone who wants to go over, I'm not going to argue with you, but I would say you want the upside of this team. I think the under is a play. Tough division too.
Same page. I just feel like it's too many things need to go right for it to go over 11.5 with a division that's still difficult. They still get Buffalo Road, KC Road, and their last 4 games at Cincinnati, at home against New England, which you could call easy, but you never know what's going to happen there with them and all the additions they've had. And then at Green Bay, at Pittsburgh. So I just think too much can go wrong. 11.5 is a little bit much. I like the under better than Kansas City. All right, last win total this high is Buffalo. So set at 11.5. They've gone over their win total in 3 straight years, and they are 7-1 to their win total over in their last 8. So they've been pretty efficient in that area, and I think it has a lot to do with the division. The biggest move of the offseason, Josh Allen got his ring. Now he's looking for another ring. They've got the 5th easiest schedule, which I think says a lot about who they're going to play, but it's also Baltimore, KC, Philly, Cincinnati, all at home, which has to help at some point. Thoughts, Buffalo?
Buffalo is just so good, so well run. This is another one. Like this is so Buffalo is actually my favorite Super Bowl future in the AFC.
Oh, interesting.
I think they have the best path to the 1 seed. So this actually would be the one I would give the least resistance to if you wanted to bet the over. I just personally don't see a point in betting like over 11.5 wins for really anyone.
Sure.
But you could make a case for it because you got your hardest games at home. And the road slate 8 games instead of 9, and it's not too bad. I mean, Houston, Pittsburgh, okay, and then the division is getting easier by the day. I mean, every day Mike McDaniels goes on to the press conference and mumbles some nonsense about some good player on the Dolphins that they're about to trade away. The Jets are going all in on Justin Fields, and I mean the Patriots. I mean, Stephon Diggs fucks, but is he going to fuck for them this year? Like, you know what I mean? So it's a lot going on.
That is the main headline. That is the main headline.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I can't really tell you why to bet the Bills under. So this is one if you are looking to bet an over on one this high, this is the one I would lean. I think they improved the receiver room. I think drafting a bunch of defensive players is actually the right move because remember the Patriots, they would have, I don't know, Danny Amendola, whoever they found in the 7th round, or like they knew they had Tom Brady. The Bills are doing the same thing. They're like, yo, we got Josh. We'll sign Elijah Moore to a 1-year deal. We'll use Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, all these stiffs. Like it doesn't matter. They're gonna be there.
Yeah, and I guess the question I have is, should you win? I mean, you can bet win totals pretty much after every week, the entire season almost, till you get close to the end. Maybe they lose to Baltimore? Like maybe they drop the first one at home and it dips to 10.5 or 10 or something like that. That would be my only thought there. Like the rest of the schedule is very cake, but that is an interesting one to start off. So that was I would
say I think. I mean, it's recording this a little early in the morning my time, but I think I'm just trying to go over this in my head. Got the Good Will Hunting, but I think. If that were the case, the Buffalo's hosting Baltimore, right? So
they lose.
It'd probably just be better taking Baltimore as an underdog on a money line,
sure,
and not even worrying about like that.
But if you were interested in buying Buffalo and you said to yourself, okay, it's probably going to drop a win and a half, something like that, I would guess, if they lost a home game in that situation.
Yeah, but I'm saying you would get if you thought that was happening.
Yeah, you would
have
Baltimore.
A better payout by just taking. You would have a better payout by just taking Baltimore on the money line, I believe. Completely. I mean, it just wouldn't like I don't think you would kind of base your plans based on like, are they going to win or lose week 1? I mean, unless it's the Bengals who are going to lose week 1.
Yeah, that money line's like plus 120, so completely understand.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just do that and not even worry about like the little minute. Because the books also know this, like they're prepared, like you're not going to see a massive trade. Like I think the bigger one is like we talked about the Chiefs, where it's you have a legitimate 4 or 5 games that they could start out like 4-4 or something, and I mean You're talking about now it's like a race if they can't lose any more games. That could change things in the market. An injury could change things in the market, but I would just take the Ravens win total if you thought the Ravens money line if you thought the Bills were going to drop that game.
That is a fair assessment. All right, let's go to the win totals under 11 right now. You got 4 teams. We can go a little quicker here. So Lions are sitting at 10.5. They've gone over their win total in 3 straight seasons entering this year, their longest streak since the early 90s. So to me, just offensive line losses. Zyler Ragnow have a rookie now at center. You lose Carlton Davis, Sedarius. I mean, there's a bunch of, things and people switching out on both sides of the ball. Also pretty tough schedule. A lot of primetime games. So I'm curious, like overall thought on Detroit.
Fade.
Yeah.
Really tough schedule. I mean, road games. at Philly, at KC, at Baltimore, at Washington, at the Rams, at Cincinnati,
And then look
at
at the
Green
end of the
Bay,
year.
at Chicago.
End of the year
At
at
Minnesota.
at Minnesota, at Chicago. So I agree. Like the whole situation's beginning season. Like you look at all 17 games, there's really 15 battles and 2 easy games.
Giants and Cleveland.
Yeah, and aside from that, like they're really going to be in it every single week, where they can win or lose games. It depends on. Goff is coming off of the best season he's had by far in his career, and it's just like, how do you really feel about him in that scenario? Now, I looked. There's not a ton of outdoor cold Goff situation games, but I don't know necessarily if that means anything. Like I still think they could probably be beat in their building or in domes. So
yeah, I mean, no, this team. Listen, they've turned into a great organization under Dan Campbell, and a lot of credit. But it's not just a schedule. I mean, that's one thing. But this team is. I mean, they've been covering every week. You can't fade them based on schedule. It's the interior of the offensive line that gives Jared Goff trouble. You're talking about literally all gone essentially. Like this is the only guy you retained was the worst guy. And then you're talking about you lost Ben Johnson, and not only Ben Johnson, you lost Tanner Engstrom as well to the Jets. So you have your offensive coordinator and your passing game coordinator gone, with a potential for more interior pressure, with the tough schedule and likely more passing. Just a lot. Defensive coordinator lost too, and we know the defense's downside, right? Because this was a defense that I forget the DVOA rank, but I know it was near the top of the league. But we also saw this defense over the last few weeks of the season. They couldn't stop a damn thing. They get to the playoffs and immediately at home lose to a Washington team with a rookie quarterback and give up damn near 50 points. So, I mean, they single-handedly saved the 49ers statistical offensive season with their defense. I mean, it's so that's the downside there. They added DJ Reed, but yeah, I just think there's so many red flags with Detroit, and I'll give you one more. We talked about Pythagorean wins a little, and you will see this at times with these teams. You win 15 games, but their point differential implied they should have won 13 games. Teams that overperform by 2+. Now, this is at the lower end of that 2+. This is 2 exactly, but teams that overperform by 2+, just 14 and 30 to the over the next year. They're going over just 32% of the time, less than 1/3. And this goes back to 2002. So I'm going way back here to get the sample size, just to kind of see what happens when you overperform to that extent. And even if you look at teams that overperform by just 1 or more, so you can kind of get it a little more widen the sample size, put it center it a little bit more for Detroit with the 2. You're still looking at only about a 43% hit rate to the over. So a lot of things that suggest that Detroit could take a step back, and the books have already priced it in. I mean, they're not even at 11.5, right? They're at 10.5.
Correct.
So tough division. What are your thoughts on the Lions here?
We kind of said it earlier. I think the line's an issue, but I'll just give you one fact here before we move on to Cincinnati, since I teased it earlier. So Lions won 15 games. Win total was 10.5. That's a +4.5 win increase on expectation. So Detroit's going to be the 11th team in the last decade to have a double-digit win total the year after eclipsing their win total by 4+. Previous 10 teams went 2-8 to the over. So I just think expectations, like you said, in a number of different, your Pythag stat is also great. I just think they're set up for a small comeback. And I also think the division is another thing to look at. Like, it's just, that division is absolutely brutal and probably better on some levels. And I think they're a little worse. So I think that's what makes sense to me.
Potentially a lot worse.
Yeah.
I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs led the league in touchdowns and had 2,000 scrimmage yards, and he was like a backup for half the year. Like if he gets hurt, I mean, that changes things a little even. And there's just a lot of different things that could go wrong for Detroit. So I actually bet them to miss the playoffs as well. You can get some pretty juicy odds. I mean, relatively juicy, at around 2-1. Or something in that range. I think that's pretty fair. And you also see a lot of plus EV betting teams, that long to miss the playoffs to do it. It happens more than people would think, and this is certainly the division where it could happen. I'm personally higher on the Packers in this division and the Bears. I think the Lions take a step back, and I think Minnesota definitely it could. I mean, there's a lot of Minnesota glazing now. I think everyone's trying to make up for last year, but we'll see.
Yeah, different quarterback, different situation. All right, let's go to the Bengals. So I love this fact. So between 1990 and 2022, the Bengals never had a double-digit win total entering any season. With a win total of 10 in 2025, they are now third straight year with a double-digit win total, and they've gone under the previous 2 years. So obviously there's questions with Hendrickson and Stewart on the defensive side, just not being there at the moment. Replacing both guards. I kind of like that they had Pirine in the passing game with Brown and Moss. To me, the biggest issue with Cincinnati is probably the secondary. Their defense, with Hendrickson and Stewart assuming they're back, maybe okay on the pass rush, but I still think the secondary is a problem. The one thing I like about the schedule, 4 primetime games, all separated by at least 2 games, so no crazy back-to-backs or anything to have to do there. I also kind of like they end the year with Arizona and Cleveland both at home. You've said it a million times, but Burrow 1-9 straight up in his first 2 games of his of the season, which just feels absolutely impossible. But I'll toss it back to you. Cincinnati at 10. What are you doing?
Not betting the over, that's for sure. I mean, I think like this team. This is like the team that they beat the Chiefs in the conference title game. This is an upside team. I don't see any point in betting the team that's going to probably sleepwalk through the first couple weeks of the season. A team that can lose to literally anybody. And you said assuming Hendrickson and Stewart are back. I mean, go tell that to Bengals fans. They feel like not only may Henderson not get the money and end up retiring. A lot of people are, and this surprised me because I mean this time of year, guys are just working on contract language. It is what it is. But a lot of people seem to think that the Bengals aren't going to budge on whatever they're doing with Stewart, and Stewart is like upset that they're trying to make an example out of him, and it's all kind of silly. But there's people that think that they would just let him go back in the draft. And which would be nuts after. So I mean, I don't know how. I mean, there's a lot of it's this time of year. No one has anything else to talk about, and in these off season, it's this time of the off season. But I mean, I would say the vibes aren't great in Cincinnati. So I mean, if you are looking for an over, I would say this is going to drop to 9.5, or you could already get a 9.5. Like this is a team. You talk about waiting, maybe. I think you could actually make a case based on the track record to wait because you've got like the same coach, the same quarterback, and you just keep sleepwalking through the first couple of weeks of the season. So, I mean, the road schedule is not. I don't love it. At Buffalo, Green Bay, Denver, Minnesota, Miami, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Like, I can't really make a case for the over. I mean, just Joe Burrow is just so good. That's it. So I personally it's upside for me, Super Bowl, AFC, things like that. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm back to probably, I think it was Nick Giffen who put the bet out for like the Bengals to allow the most points on defense last year. Like it's just, I think you're looking at the exact same team. Like they're going to score a ton of points on offense. Everything's going to look clean there. And I think the defense, and they're going to give up a lot of big plays. So, all right, let's keep rolling here. 2 teams left, both NFC West. We'll start with the 49ers. I think the stat that's probably the most interesting there is they won 6 games last year. They now have a win total of 10. Last decade, San Francisco will be just the 4th team to jump 4+ wins to have a win total of 9 or more the following year, with Chargers in 24, Broncos, and the 49ers again in 2021. To me, other than New England, it's probably the biggest turnover of any team we've seen. They've lost at least 27 players from what I counted. Now they've done a lot to bring in new talent and new people, and there's a lot of, kind of flipping around here. But no Debo. Ayuk currently injured, and I think there's a question or two there. You've got 3 rookies, I believe, starting on defense, if I'm looking right there, with Collins, Williams, and Martin. So I just think the turnover in San Francisco, I've heard a lot of Action Network people talk about San Francisco. They all seem to be in favor of them and kind of like their upside. I'm just a little bit more skeptical, but I know they have the easiest schedule and there's some things there to like. But what are your thoughts on the Niners?
Yeah, they're going to the Super Bowl.
There you go. Yeah, like I said,
everyone
is just everyone is just, yeah, I get it. Understood.
But they're going to the Super Bowl, obviously. Like, this is what they do. It's either
Yep.
last place finish or they're going at least to the NFC Championship game. So, yeah, I have a Super Bowl ticket on San Francisco. I didn't bet they're over on their win total. But the schedule is easy, but I think the division is not easy. I think the division is very good. So I could completely get behind at least not betting they're over, even though you're bullish on them. But I do think when you talk about the roster turnover, it needed to happen because like last year they were a 6-win team. They were injured, and like a lot of the guys, they're essentially replacing guys who are injured or not really playing for them anyway last year with like higher upside younger guys who should be less likely to get injured. And they drafted 5 players in the top 113. Granted, it was like an draft, but overall, in just year by year class. But 5 in the top 113. They have 8 in the top 160. So this could be a completely different team, but I think that's a good thing. I think like we know Kyle Shanahan's already brought three squads, 3 squads to the Super Bowl in the last 9 years. So offensively, so we know what he's going to do. Purdy, 8.9 career yards per attempt. He's a very efficient quarterback. That's all you really need.
I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to be the guy on San Francisco. I think everyone else is. But I'm just I see the schedule's really easy. I see a lot of reasons for them to do it again. Shanahan's done it, all sorts of different things. I see a crack. So we're going to go there. All right. Last one is the Rams. This one, 9.5 at some spots. Westgate holds it at 10, so they are the 8th team. They're 6-2 to the over in the win total under McVay. Gone over last 2 years. He tends to absolutely get the most out of his roster. So I think that's, probably something that's going into this. They've lost Cooper Kupp to Marcus Robinson. They've added Devontae Adams. The other one I really like is I like the Poona Ford at defensive tackle. He was good with the Chargers. I think that's going to help them as well since their up front is also very, very good. So I think that makes them a little bit better. I think I'm a little worried about their back half. Up front, fantastic. But the linebacker, CB, safety, a little possibly weak to me. Maybe a weakness on that defense. I think the only other thing with their schedule that I noted here is 4 road games in their last 6 at the end of the year, which could be a little tricky if you're trying to get to an over on a win total. But 9.5, I feel safer about in this sense. And then I'll give you one before I toss it to you. I want to mention again, so we talked about it earlier about new double-digit win totals, so first year, which would be the Rams in this spot. So 35, 57, and 4 to the over, 38%. It's usually a bit of a tough climb for that first team in that first year getting to this level. But what are your thoughts on the Rams?
I would not bet them to win 11 games, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, sure.
I like them. Another team, high upside, but still a tough division, and I think there is some fragility there. You got and to their credit, a lot of guys, I think, overachieving, just kind of outplaying their draft pedigree, especially on defense. Well-coached team, but and I think Westgate is kind of shrewd for setting it at 10 because now you got to win 11.
Yeah.
And that's just tough in this division, especially, San Francisco shouldn't be a 6-win team anymore. I think the Rams beat San Francisco on some crazy comeback last year. And this is another one of those teams that, and I'll cut them some slack because they did kind of punt the last week of the season, but they overperformed by 2 wins as well compared to their Pythagorean wins. So, they were just an 8-win team, Pythagorean. So this is there's some red flags there. But I'll give you a fun. So I would go. It's under or nothing, but I like them for this Super Bowl ticket. But I'll give you a fun trivia. Not only are the Rams one of those 6 teams, in the like McVay one of those 6 teams in the Super Bowl over the last 9 years, but over the past 6 years, there's only been 7 quarterbacks to start in the Super Bowl, and the Rams have 2 of them.
It's Garoppolo.
Garoppolo. Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about there's just a concentrated power within the National Football League, and if this is a year where the Eagles don't win the NFC, it's gonna be either McVay or Shanahan. So just take your pick. But they might. I know they don't have a double-digit win total, but I think one of the reasons I'm hesitant to bet overs on the Rams or even the Niners is because I think Arizona could be very good, especially in a regular season. Arizona's because if you're talking about easy schedules, well, Arizona's schedule is even easier because they they play like New Orleans, like they're essentially the same as San Francisco. Like their schedule is like the same as San Francisco's, and I don't think their roster's that far behind either. And I think their roster's a little less likely to get hurt than either of these two teams. So I think Arizona, and then Seattle's like not like I think they could be really bad, but just on talent alone, like their defense could be solid enough to keep them in games. I think it could go downhill, but it's not a guarantee. So I'd be hesitant about. I think this could be another one of those gauntlets, and another reason like Washington. If you're thinking of fading Washington or Philly in the NFC East, like the NFC East might be a one-team playoff, like division this year because of the North, and because I think this division is also very, very good. So that's how I would approach it. I mean, the Rams didn't even win 11 games last year. No way I would bet them to win 11 this year. But will they be there when it's all said and done? Would I be scared of them if I'm going up against them and it's like a 9-win wild card? Hell yeah. Like this Matthew Stafford with Jimmy G backing him up. That's one of the best backup situations in the league. I know make fun of him as a starter and whatnot, but yeah, they tend to just outplay their talent. So high upside team.
I think the way I would play the Rams would be, I know a lot of books are going to offer like, will a team be a wild card berth? I think that's intriguing. I also think trying to nail exact wins for them, like 8-9 area, 7-8-9 maybe, I think is an interesting way to bet them, because I do think they get up there, and I think that's possible. And then the only other thing I'd say about Arizona, I do kind of love their schedule, and you mentioned it. Only Thursday Night Football Week 4 versus Seattle, and then their only other primetime game at Dallas comes Monday Night Football after the bye. So pretty decent spot for them. And other than that, they're pretty much 1 and 4 o'clock the entire season.
And no real weather games.
Yeah,
I think they only go they go to Cincinnati late in the year, but like that's going to be a shootout. It could be hail, sleet, and snow, and all 10 of the that's going to be a shootout. So yeah, Arizona could surprise people. They drafted defense 5 straight, and that's what they needed to do. Harrison underperformed, right? Yeah. So this is like that. That's why a lot of times like people don't think about you got to kind of handicap the entire division, and really even more than that when you're kind of betting these win totals, because there's not as much margin for error. So yeah, love San Francisco, like the Rams as well, but not on the win total. Not on the win total.
Exact forecast: Arizona, Rams, San Francisco, Seattle. Lock it in.
Okay. I mean, I would flip flop them.
I know you would.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta respect the regression, right? It's like San Francisco, they don't put up 2 straight last place seasons. They go last to the Super Bowl. I was like, they do. The Eagles are the team that you gotta be worried about. Like,
no, what happens is San Francisco wins 13 games and then they flop out in like the first or second round. But
no, they'll flop out in the conference championship. Yeah. Heartbreakingly so on like a Brock Purdy his elbow will come out of his shoulder or something ridiculous. No, I'm not wishing that.
Yeah, let's not wish that on anyone else. All right, that has been it. We've gone through all 8 double-digit win totals. We've talked about, our article, the article that's up on the site on Action Network right now to go check out. You've now heard Raybon go over almost 40 teams in a bunch of different podcasts, so got to appreciate that. But thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Evan Abrams. That was Chris Raybon. Check out all of our stuff on the Action Network feed and enjoy the day, everybody.